Welcome back to Upside Down Data. Today I want to talk about SUI and where our models think it might be heading next. So if you're not familiar, SUI is a very fast and scalable and cheap to use blockchain that has been rallying very impressively recently. Now it's a pretty new asset. It has not existed for very long. May of 2023 is really when its price history begins. But even with that, we can start to apply some of our models and see where do they think it's heading next. Does it have more gas in the tank, or might it need to catch its breath soon? So let's go ahead and talk about that. So the first model I want to talk about over on our website, claritydigital.io, link in the description if you want to check it out, is our long-term upside downside potential indicator. So this is one of our risk models. If you've been following the channel, you're very familiar with this. Higher values mean higher risk. Lower values mean lower risk. And so basically what this model is trying to tell you is how risky is the asset right now. When risk is low, those tend to be good times to be acquiring that asset. When it's high, suggesting that maybe selling out at that point might be a good idea, that some downside might be on the horizon. So with this, it's important to note that because SUI is such a young asset, applying any model to it is going to be more difficult than if it had more history. There's just less data to learn from. But fortunately, with the UDPI, you can apply it, and it does give useful insight. And I think already, even just in this limited amount of time, it did a good job of identifying that around here, for example, getting up to about 2.57, bit high risk here. Might be good to take some off the top, buying back in down here at around negative 3.22. Pretty good idea. And indeed, that's what we've seen play out through here. Now, importantly to this video, where is the long-term UDPI right now? Well, it's up at about 3.5. The top of the scale on the UDPI is 5. So we're getting pretty close to that top of the scale. So there is more room if SUI wants to keep running. There is more room the model thinks is there. But I think at this point, I'd be getting a little bit cautious, at least for the kind of medium-term outlook. It would not surprise me for SUI to have to take a break and catch its breath. Doesn't mean it has to have a correction as deep as this last one it experienced, but something, maybe sideways chop, consolidation, maybe a bit of a correction, would not surprise me at all. That tends to be what you see after you get to these high UDPI levels. So still some more room if it wants to, but I personally would be getting a little bit cautious there. Now, that's one perspective. Let's flip over to another model that we have. This is our momentum bias indicator. So this is basically looking at the asset and seeing, is momentum being biased or predominating to the upside or to the downside? What you'll see is that in bullish times in the market, really in kind of bull markets, now with SUI, it hasn't really seen a full cycle yet, so these are kind of mini bull and bear cycles within it. But in a bull market, you'll see this kind of behavior. You get into the green and you tend to stay up there or only have brief kind of blips down into the red, and you just more or less stay in this footing. In a bear market, you see it flip. Get down deep into the red and stay down there as you go down, down, down further. Now, importantly, we did see this flip bullish again. Got back up to the green, a brief blip down to the red, but then right back up to the green again and off to the races we've been. Now, if we want to see this continue, we'd like to see something like we saw back through here, that as we kind of move down, we kind of have this form into these waves that kind of hang out up here, or at the very least, we don't get anywhere near the deep of the red showing up. We really want to stay in the green as long as possible. If we see something like this happen, really a waning of that positive momentum bias, and especially going into the red, that's where it would get concerning. So far, so good. We haven't seen that yet, and that kind of goes along with what I'm seeing on the long-term UDPI, where it wouldn't surprise me if it keeps going up a bit more, but I don't think it's just going to be able to continue ripping to the upside. I don't think we're going to see a move as big as what it just did all over again to the upside. I suspect we're going to need to see some cooling off before too terribly long. And what we might see for confirmation of that is if we do see momentum bias really move aggressively down to the downside, and especially get into the red, that would be the time where I'd say, all right, there it is. We're already seeing the conditions. We're getting to the point where some cooling off was likely needed. Now we're there if we end up seeing that negative read on the MBI. So obviously not financial advice. You should make of these data as you will, but that's what I'm seeing when I look at these. Now, another point I wanted to make with SUI is just where it stands in terms of its market cap. So right now it's number 18 of all crypto assets, so pretty good, at about 5.7 billion in its market cap, so pretty good. So the thing I wanted to mention with this is that with SUI, it is certainly not some micro cap asset that could just go 1000x to the upside in a blink of an eye without really any problem if liquidity enters the space. It's a bigger market cap asset. It's going to take more likely for it to go on those runs. Now, of course, we've seen what assets like Solana can do already sitting at pretty high market cap levels. So I'm not trying to say that SUI can't do a 10x or anything like that, but I think we need to keep our expectations in check. People who have been saying that SUI is going to go on some crazy 100x, 1000x run, anything's possible in crypto, but I'd be very surprised. I think that we're dealing in probably a little bit lower territory, just given where it's starting out here, that when you have a higher market cap, generally speaking, it's going to be a little bit harder to push it up to those same multiples. Now, of course, if you think that SUI is going to be the next Solana, then you might be targeting it becoming, number 3, number 4 in terms of total market cap. And if that's the case, then you think it probably has to go a lot higher. But I think at this point, we're not really there yet. Now, something else I did just want to mention to kind of wrap us up is that one of the things that also makes me think that SUI probably needs to cool off a bit is just what's going on in the broader market. So just to look at Bitcoin, for example, Bitcoin has still continued to struggle. It has not been able to really decisively break out of this more or less downtrend that it's been in here decisively to the upside. And we're also seeing in broader markets some weakness forming, although of course the stock market has been more bullish than the crypto markets. But really, until we see more life out of Bitcoin, more life out of altcoins, Ethereum has not been doing well recently, and a lot of other altcoins have not been doing so well either. Even Solana has been struggling recently. Until we see that, I think that's another reason where that going along with a high risk level makes me concerned, because it's usually not the case in crypto that one asset will be able to just completely go against the rest of the market in a sustainable way. They can do it for a while, but not forever. And so when I'm already seeing risk be this high, that's another thing that gives me concern. So again, not financial advice. And really, as I was saying from the beginning, I do think SUI could continue higher here for a bit. But what I'm seeing from some of these other indicators and what we're looking at seeing in the broader market makes me concerned. And so I personally think that it might be getting near this recent rally. But that's not to say that SUI can't do impressive things going forward. I think the bigger question becomes, are we still in a bull market for crypto? If we are, then I suspect SUI very well could look like some of those assets that you've seen in the past. Even just take something like Solana, for example. When you go back to its early history, it had a nice run up, kind of a big correction, and then it went crazy after that. If we are going into a big crypto bull market, then it would not surprise me if SUI looks something like this. Although, again, given that it's starting at a higher market cap, it might not be quite as explosive to the upside, but still could be quite decent. And that's kind of the broader picture. But for now, in the more medium-term horizon, I think some cooling off might be necessary. All right, hope you liked the video. If you did, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to see live data from our models and more, you can do so over at polaritydigital.io, link in the description. And go on over to X to see live updates from our models and more.